On this episode, we talk to Michael Abebe from Blackhill Private Finance. We talk about getting FCA regulated, finding funding for high net worth overseas borrowers, and much more. Now it's time to spend 30 minutes in finance.
I'm Michael Abebe. I'm the managing principal of Blackhill Private Finance. We're an FCA authorized and regulated credits broker. And essentially, we arrange financing, loans, bridging, mortgages, aviation, corporate development, refurbishment for our clients. And we do it effectively and efficiently. And that's who we are.
Perfect. No, and thanks for coming on, Michael. Really appreciate your time. Just a quick one for everyone listening. Are you able to give us a real quick insight, as in how you actually got into this industry?
Oh, okay, well, that's quite an interesting story. So my background is private banking. I spent 10 years plus in the private banking sector. So I was working for a private bank up until April 2020. If you recall, that's when COVID hit the UK. And at the time, uh, we had a high leverage bond portfolio, which essentially got severely adversely affected when the American markets crashed on the back of COVID back in 2020, I think around March. So we weren't able to make our leverage calls, our margin calls rather. Um, uh, Subsequently after that, the shareholder equity of the bank got affected severely. The regulator stepped in and put the bank into administration. All client funds were frozen. We couldn't obviously do any lending. And within a short space of time, the bank went under. Now, I had a choice. Essentially, I had a pool of clients who effectively said, either go and seek a new banking alternative in terms of an employer, or set up your own vehicle with us, as the initial maiden clients. And that is how Blackhill Private Finance was born off the back of that disaster. So I give every thanks to COVID. It was the birth of Blackhill Private Finance. And we've grown, from strength to strength each year ever since.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's nothing like a big push like that to to get you going. And I didn't even realize that you hadn't been going that long, because you've obviously gone from strength to strength. And obviously, I'll be open with everyone listening. We've done plenty of deals with Michael, and we're hopefully plenty more. Um, but the sort of the reason why I wanted to get you on is the sort of deals that you look at are really interesting, and there's something that I think is a little bit different. Are you able to sort of, I know you mentioned at the very beginning of your intro, a slight sort of indication of what you do. Are you able to give us a little bit more flavor on the type of clients you deal with, and the sort of like, what's your main sort of bread and butter basically for Blackhill?
Oh, of course, of course. So obviously, as I mentioned before, my background is private banking. So I deal with a lot of high net worth clients to ultra high net worth clients. It's fair to say that our bread and butter business would be our bridging finance business. So we're talking about international and UK based clients who are essentially seeking a few things. One, to acquire UK property via a bridge finance. If they have already existing UK property and are seeking an equity release, we can do that very rapidly via bridging finance. Or if they are looking to refinance an existing facility, be it a mortgage or so, and they're looking for a bridge finance to achieve that fairly quickly, then we're able to assist. So that's our bread and butter businesses. Obviously, we assist with exits such as mortgage finance, which we have a significant book as well. And that's obviously growing, especially in today's economic climate. But then we do a lot of aviation finance for wealthy clients who are looking to purchase private jets. And then if you want to add on the corporate finance as well, development finance, refurbishment finance, it all comes part of our portfolio of financing. We have an ancillary service, which includes, for instance, clients who are seeking new banking accounts again, because of our background in private banking, we have a lot of relationships with a lot of banks and are able to assist our clients with that. The nature of our clients tend to acquire their properties via SPVs. As such, we also have an ancillary service which introduces clients to SPV setup structures offshore as well. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah, and we're going to have to come back to that aviation thing because I want to know how you finance a private jet, because that's not something I do very often. I've looked into it occasionally, but yeah, not that often. But for the clients that you get, obviously, sort of, are they mainly sort of, like you said, they're high net worth? Are they from all sorts of businesses, or are they sort of developers mostly, or is it just a real wide breadth?
I'd say it's a fairly wide, breadth of clients. I mean, the majority of our clients are high net worth, and they come from sectors spanning oil and gas and energy, construction, banking, financial services, um, real estate as well, developers as well, internationally and locally. It's a whole, kind of breadth of scope of a variety of clients. I would say probably the majority of them are obviously from the African continent, West Africa mainly, a few Southern African clients, but then we have clients from Asia, Hong Kong, Thailand, of quite a few from obviously Europe as well, Switzerland, Germany. Most of our clients, being high net worth, will always, be banked in multiple jurisdictions. So they'll have Swiss banking. A few of our clients obviously have US banking as well. But I think the general, majority would be banked on the African continent with, some of the more international African banks. And most of these banks obviously have subsidiaries in the UK as well. So it's easy for them to access their money when it comes to refinancing and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah, because I know obviously we've done a deal for, if I recall, a gentleman living in Nigeria, as well as obviously several UK-based ones. And for the sort of clients that are actually based abroad and won't be coming to the UK to sign documents and everything, how
Mm,
easy is that in this day and age to actually find finance in the UK for them? So be that
mm,
sort of, firstly, is it easy for bridges? And then also secondly, for sort of more term finance,
mm.
what sort of, if someone came to you, is that something you go, oh, that's easy, can do that straight away? Or is that like, I'm going to have to do a little bit of work?
Yeah. So I think we'd have to step back and look at the structure and platform that is Blackhill. So essentially, I've spent the last 3 years building a platform which effectively has partnerships with, over, 80 to 100 institutions, from banks to bridge firms, to high net worth family offices, to investment firms, to private equity firms. So essentially, when I am presented with a new deal mandate or client proposition, I'm very, very quickly able to, I guess, mind map which lender can take that on and has appetite for that. The reality is that when you have a pool of lenders, some are going to be happy with clients that are based overseas, and some are just not. I don't know whether I can name names, but there's certain
Yeah, go for
UK.
it.
Well, there's certain lenders like Hope Capital, for instance, and Roma Finance, who aren't comfortable taking on clients who are not UK residents. Period. And obviously don't have UK passports. Whereas other lenders like yourselves, Aspens, MFS, do not mind at all if a client's an overseas resident or such overseas in Nigeria, or has a foreign passport. They're absolutely okay with that. So it varies. I have clients who are British passport holders or British based, and they're tickety boo for some of these lenders who only look at UK resident type clients.
Yeah.
When it comes to the overseas clients who are based overseas and don't actually necessarily need to be in London, obviously some of these lenders who cater to that allow for remote signing and video signing as well. So that makes the logistics when it comes to the legal conveyancing a lot easier in terms of completions. Whereas with some lenders, obviously, they need the hard copy signed form. So we're talking about couriers being sent over from the various countries in questions prior as a condition precedent prior to completion and drawdown.
Yeah, does that sort of the distance actually impact on the pricing that the clients pay, or is there a bit of a parity between obviously UK residents and non?
That's a good question. I wouldn't say the distance affects the pricing. I'd say the pricing is more determined by the overall quality of the client credit profile, perhaps, and risk profile. That would more affect the pricing as opposed to the distance of the client with the lenders that I tend to work with anyway.
Well, that's
So
good to hear.
if a client's, I'll give you an example of a deal that I'm actually doing currently right now. It's for, without naming the actual client name, he was deemed, you could say, a PEP. Now, obviously, there's some adverse media on him, but that's all been cleared and defended in court, and he was fully exonerated. But because there's a whiff of some adverse, it can affect the pricing from a particular lender's viewpoint. So that's what I mean when I talk about risk profile.
Yeah,
For
so
instance,
it's not because he's
yeah,
from abroad, it's because he's a politically exposed person, and that's
which
kind of
yeah. So I tend to see it pricing be affected more by the credit or risk profile of a client rather than the jurisdiction or location of that client.
yeah. Are there any countries that you've found? Obviously, I know you deal with all over the show that are harder to fund from. I know sort of historically, as you mentioned, Nigeria, that would have been harder. Things seems to have relaxed a little bit on that front. Is there any, have you noticed anywhere harder than others?
Well, I certainly won't do countries which are obviously, very, very difficult countries because when I take a deal on for bridging finance, obviously my immediate priority is the exit of that deal, and I need to know that I can refinance or exit the deal onto a long-term bank, provider or facilitator. So therefore, there's certain countries that are more difficult or on the red list of the banks. You were talking about the Syrias, the Irans, Venezuela's, South Koreas, and so forth, that I just won't even bother wasting my time and touching. But in terms of other countries, which I would say are probably in the more category, then I don't see putting those deals finance with the banks, because I work with quite a lot of banks. There's always a particular lender available for particular clients. The only thing we have to pay attention to is pricing on the deal. Now, obviously, I categorize my banks into three categories. Obviously, the major banks, which tend to price the lowest, followed by the medium tiered banks, which are in the middle. And then you get the challenger banks, or maybe even the UK African banks, which tend to price on the higher side, simply because their cost of funds is just higher. So, I'm talking a bank which would be, for instance, a 4% basic pricing, internal pricing plus LIBOR. Now, if LIBOR's at 4%, we're talking about 8% right now. Whereas a tier one bank would price anywhere from about the 2.75 to 3.25. You see what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's yeah, because it is, and that's I was going to ask, obviously, how the current sort of market has actually impacted on your business. Obviously, things are well, dare I say, settling down, maybe, but they're less
Yeah,
sort of wobbly than they were
yeah.
at sort of October time last year. How has that sort of impacted you? And
That,
obviously, you mentioned the rates and everything. So yeah, let
yeah,
us know.
yeah. That's a good question. That's a very good question. A very pertinent question. So I would divide that. I would answer in two ways. So first of all, I work with when you deal with high net worth clients, you tend to work with a category of clients who are, let's just say, more price insensitive to rates from lenders. So these guys tend not to be as affected by pricing or interest rates going up they'll still want to get a deal done. And then the second part of that question, how I'd answer that, is that with regards to what's going on in the macroeconomic economy, in terms of interest rates and so forth, it's actually caused an influx of new business for us, simply because you've got those clients who were on variable rates, which have now seen a 4% rise in the last, I don't know, 6 to 8 months in terms of interest rates, and are obviously now looking to refinance to slightly more cheaper solutions. So we've had a bunch of clients coming seeking our services in that regard. So whilst it's become a more volatile climate out there, it's actually seen a bit of a boost for our mortgage finance business, if anything, over the last 6 to 7 months, mostly through firefighting and trying to find cheaper solutions and so forth, which obviously has benefited our bottom line. But in general, when you deal with high net worth clients, they tend to be more price insensitive to interest rate or term pricing rates within the lenders. So yeah, that's what I find. I mean, and then obviously if you're dealing with clients who aren't as high net worth, they're going to be obviously more price sensitive, which is just, fairly normal.
Yeah, because it's interesting that they get less so, because I would imagine there's a bit of a like a bell curve, really, that if you're sort of really struggling, let's say you've got really poor credit and you don't have great income, you won't have as much choice, so you basically have to accept what's given. And then as that goes up, you get a little bit more. But it seems that once you hit a certain amount of wealth, then it looks as though I guess the sort of cost of that business, maybe because they're getting so much of a sort of return on whatever investments they're doing, that the sort of
Mm.
the scales are much larger, that the actual interest rate
Yeah.
is relatively insignificant, I'm guessing, which is
Well,
interesting. It's not
yeah,
something that I've really thought about.
yeah. So that's a true point. However, you also have to understand, David, and this is probably a very, very important point that I would advise anyone who is looking to get into bridging finance. You also need to understand why your clients are coming to you for bridging finance as well. That's a very, very important point for us. And most times we have found that the need for bridging finance is because they sometimes struggle to be able to complete the deals in the time they hope to complete them. So for instance, I'll give you an example. You have a client who's is absolutely hell-bent on acquiring a new property, and for instance may be seeking a mortgage for that. But for various logistical reasons, the clients are not able to move funds from a certain location in time, or are not able to get the forex they need in order to complete the transaction in time, or their mortgage is the process of seeking the mortgage, going through the various committees, is taking a considerable more time than they had hoped for. And you, on the flip side, have the estate agents and sellers or developers who are a bit of an impatient bunch. And so therefore, the clients come to us seeking a quick fix solution to solve all those issues, and bridging finance does that. So we found a lot of deals have come to us because of the the time factor, and wanting to get the deals done. Certainly when it comes to acquiring property in lightning quick times, to avoid them losing out on purchasing those properties. So when you understand that, you'll know that bridging finance solves a lot more problems for these clients, regardless of what the pricing is on the deals or the interest rates, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, because they get in the deal, and that's just being in the game is the most important thing, and obviously that helps. Are you happy to sort of have a quick chat about the FCA regulation side of things? Because obviously you're fully authorized, and
Yeah.
only relatively recently, when was that? Sort of mid last year, something like that?
August the 5th, to be precise. Yes,
Oh,
last year.
yeah, it's the birth of the regulated, or directly
Yeah.
authorized. How did you actually find that sort of that process? Because we deal with a lot of brokers that are both regulated and unregulated, and a lot of the unregulated ones are always sort of contemplating doing it, but they always, I think, scared off by the amount of work that it
Yeah.
appears to take. Was it a lot of work, and how how did you find it?
It was an insane amount of work, to be honest. It took a lot of time. It took quite a bit of help, to be honest. And I mean, it took me about 3 months just to fill out the forms. You know, it's just that it's they're that meticulous, they're that detailed. You are going to leave yourself open for, you know, ultra scrutiny dating back, you know, 21 odd years. I mean, they were asking questions dating back to just after graduation, you
Oh,
know,
wow.
and they will go through your, they will, you know, we're talking, you know, they'll go through your profile, and it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And to be honest, there's even more work post being regulated. So I don't know if you know how it works, but when you're regulated, you literally, I mean, it's a full job of compliance, put it that way. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
a compliance officer from my district, but you're required to report to the FCA on a quarterly basis and give them in-depth details of the running of your business and your deals and from an from the unregulated business to the regulated business, you know. So it is a lot of work. You have to keep up to date with, you know, with all their reports, their emails, and you know, I wouldn't say it's fun, but it is what it. Yeah.
Yeah, and has that actually sort of, obviously, since getting directly authorized, has that helped your business in terms of, as obviously with that and obviously all the extra sort of work, it does come with an air of credibility. Maybe that's the wrong word, but something, you know, there's something about it that
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
unregulated firms don't have. Has
Uh,
that helped?
Well, I'll tell you specifically the ways it's helped and the reasons why, you know, I chose to become regulated. I mean, it wasn't out of a whim. It was for specific reasons.
With all that work, it couldn't have been. Yeah.
Of course. So ultimately, you know, as I said, we work with, you know, over 100 lenders. There are certain lenders who will not essentially pay you a procuration fee or an intro fee unless you're regulated. They just won't. So we found prior to us being regulated, we were forfeiting obviously a lot of our fees from you know, that could have come from banks. You know, for ourselves, and we thought that was not necessary. I mean, why would we? So from the standpoint of a financial, you know, economic sense, we sought regulation because, you know, we wanted to make sure we captured fees when we referred business to the big banks.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're talking about the gold standard in the UK economic financial sector. So yes, it has brought credibility, it has brought recognition and respect. And when you work with certain clients, that translates to a sense of, you know, trust, calm, loyalty, and understanding in terms of you doing a good job for them. Obviously, you know, as well, it comes with a sense of, you know, discipline, I guess, because, you know, when you're regulated, obviously you can't just do what you want. You have to work within the scope of the FCA guidelines when it comes to treating your customers fairly and so forth. So customers know that they can trust a regulated firm not to do any hanky panky or, you know, or change them or provide them, you know, a less stellar service. So it kind of works or benefits both clients and you know, regulated entity as well. So it's been a win-win for us, and it certainly has boosted our profile and credibility with all our clients. And suffice to say that when I pitch to a new client, the fact they know I'm FCA regulated, I don't have to pitch, you know, as hard. I think they know exactly the sort of level that we operate at.
Yeah, because I guess it's like a seal of approval,
Yeah,
essentially to go along with it.
yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So one other thing, that obviously, and this is I didn't obviously point this out, but beforehand, but I wanted to get your opinion on. I don't know if you know that there is a new certificate out for sort of specifically the unregulated side of things for development finance and bridging finance. There's a sort of the equivalent of CMAP, but just for those in particular. And then it's basically just a qualification that FIBA, I
Yeah,
want to say the NACFB, No,
Yeah,
the Association of Short-Term Lenders have
yeah,
helped do that is to just allow people to get a minimum level of education so that somebody
sure.
coming into that space knows. So yeah, what's your
Yeah,
thoughts on that?
I think that would be welcome. I don't see any harm in that at all whatsoever. I mean, I listen. I'm a private banker, and I'm qualified in multiple regards. Simply because before I got into bridging finance, I had to obviously do the CFA, IMC qualifications for investment management and so forth, and that helped me in good stead and helped my career. Obviously, now being a financier or commercial broker, I think the FCA would have looked at my career as well, looked at my qualifications, and would have taken all that into consideration prior to approving me as well. So I think any sort of qualification just is always a plus to the applicant or firm in question.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be biased and say that obviously the FCA authorization, direct authorization, is probably the highest standard or the highest seal of approval you
Yeah,
can
I
get.
think so. Yeah, no, I agree. And obviously, I'm conscious of the time, so I don't want to keep you too much longer. But are there any kind of interesting deals or anything that you'd like to share just to show the sort of stuff that you've been able to sort of do and clients that you've been able to help?
Sure. I have a vast array of deals that I've done and continue to do, but the deals that I take the most pleasure in are the ones that are done, I guess, in the quickest amount of time. I mean, I mean, I've got a deal closing on Monday, which has been fairly difficult, but I'm happy it's coming to conclusion on Monday. A fairly difficult one. But the one that I take the most, the source of deals I take the most pride in, I mean, will be the one I closed in just before Christmas on the 23rd, in fact, which was done literally in about, I would say, 7 days.
Wow.
The client was very, very quick, high quality. He put down 2.8 million pounds of his own money, including stamp duty. We lent him 2.9 million. He bought a 5 million pounds St John's Wood penthouse. Very, very happy. And it was just the speed and quality of the deal. The lawyers were on point. Everyone worked well in harmony to get it done just in time for Christmas. And when you do a deal of that size in 7 days, that gives me the most amount of pleasure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And your
so
bank account as well. That is very quick though for that sort of thing. That is exceptional. So
yeah, so I was going to say I've got a client who is currently we're assisting him to refinance two properties, and we recently just got the terms approved and so forth. One of those properties is in the Bishop's Avenue in Hampstead. I think it's an £8 million house or mansion or something, and that's going through with the bank, and he's got another property in St John's Wood as well. So this is a two property deal. Obviously, I have a partnership with the bank, so we'll be paid procuration fees from them, and we charge our standard fees with the client, and those two deals should close, around about, I would say, May, June or so. But I'd be very, very happy with those because it's two properties at the same time. We're talking total loan value of about maybe 6.56 million. So that should be a nice kicker deal, but that's been a fairly difficult one because it's with the bank, and the bureaucracy and paperwork is a bit more cumbersome. But those are the sort of deals, that sort of high value, difficult, but with two properties as opposed to just one, which would kind of be like a portfolio deal, which would be exciting. So I can't wait for that to close in, I'd say, June or so.
yeah, well, once that one's done, drinks on you, I guess.
Not a
That'll
problem
be
at
a
all.
decent one. But yeah, no, Michael, I want to get if anybody wants to obviously get in touch with you that's listening to this, where can they find you?
Well, you can always check out our website. There's information there to contact us. I mean, info at blackhillprivatefinance.com. Otherwise, you can reach out to me directly at Michael at blackhillprivatefinance.com. And yeah, and I'll make sure to always respond to any new inquiry within 24 hours. So yeah, I'll be happy to get in touch with anyone who seeks our assistance and our services.
Perfect. And I'll make sure I link all of Michael's details in the description. So if anyone does please do get in touch with him. And is there anything else you want to have a sort of mention or talk about?
Well, I'm looking forward to doing a whole lot more business with FBSE Finance. So,
Flattery
so
gets you everywhere.
David.
No, yeah, well, I really appreciate your time. I've got plenty more questions I could ask you, but I know you're a busy man and it is a Friday, so I will let you go. But thanks ever so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks, David.
Awesome. Thanks, Michael.